Welcome to our channel, Behind My Story. Please like, share and subscribe.
We lived with a monster who knew no mercy. He would hit and insult us all the time. I wished him dead on a daily basis. He would kick me out of the house often. But as we all know, there comes a turning point in everyone's life that either ends in success or tragedy. Oh, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Lara. I am the middle sister among 4 siblings. We lived with a cruel father, whose bad behavior had long erased any kind memories we may have once had for him. Our mother was kind, lovely, and responsible. She used to take care of us in every way, but she finally had to abandon us because she just couldn't take any more of father's abuse. I remember the scene vividly to this very day. There was a big fight between my parents. At the end of it, mother had opened the door while holding a suitcase. We were too young to understand anything at the time. She was crying as she turned and walked out of our lives forever. We were expecting father's attitude to change after that, but it didn't. He continued mistreating and ridiculing us every opportunity he got, neglecting us completely. He gave us neither food nor clothes, only a very small amount of money to fend for ourselves. What could we do? We had to live with the situation. He would often return home drunk at midnight. Scared, we'd stay quiet in our rooms. The only bright spot in our lives was our dear brother Philip. He was father's favorite son, which caused us to depend on Philip to get anything we need, like money or other necessities. Philip was so funny. He could make us and even father laugh. He had a way with father and could usually manipulate him to protect us a little. We all loved Philip. He was the only sunshine in our miserable, gloomy existence. One day, we woke up in the middle of a stormy weather. We turned on the TV and listened to the news. It said the bad weather had spawned a huge tornado. It was heading our way. They advised people to stay inside. We all looked at each other, knowing full well that our old worn-out roof could not withstand the tornado. Philip said he needed to talk to father. After he knocked and entered father's room, we heard father shouting at Philip. Philip had a look of fear on his face. Father then shouted, "If anyone wants to fix anything at home, then he is welcome to, but I will not fix anything." Philip gasped and said, "But Dad, it's a big tornado." Father then grabbed Philip by the collar and pulled him up close, saying, "Then you go fix it." Philip was so afraid he couldn't swallow. Father dragged Philip to the backyard. He brought nails, wood, a hammer, and a long ladder. Philip was terrified when father pushed these things at him and told him to get to work. Philip begged, "Please, Dad," but father just shouted, "Go." Philip took the nails, the hammer, and the wood and began to climb the ladder up to the roof. The wind was howling, blowing very hard, and I had a feeling of dread that something terrible was about to happen. Father just stood there, not worried about Philip's safety at all. To calm us down, Philip looked at us, as if to say, "Don't worry, everyone. I'll be okay." There were many wires on the roof. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind caused Philip to lose his balance, and he reached out to grab onto something to keep from falling. Unfortunately, he got hold of an uninsulated wire. He screamed at once and fell off the roof. We watched, horrified, and began screaming. Father frantically rushed over to Philip's body lying on the ground. He lifted Philip's head into his arms and rocked him gently, but Philip was dead. He got electrocuted. We had never seen father cry, but he cried a lot that day. At Philip's funeral, we all stood and looked at the photo, showing Philip smiling like an angel. Father hugged us as a group and said, "Please forgive me, kids. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that I loved you all so much. I'm so sorry for not being a good father." We believed him. We hugged him back. He was being sincere with us for once. From that point on, he was a changed man. He gave us everything. Love, attention, money. Now we love our home and our lives. I can finally say truthfully, with all my heart, I love you, Daddy. Hello, everyone. I'm Lauren. Did you ever wonder what it would be like to have your life completely destroyed by someone close to you? Ever thought about what you would do then? I didn't have time to think, 'cause that's exactly what happened to me. It all started 2 years ago. I lived a quiet life with my mom and dad and my sister. I loved my family. We were always together. We were happy until that fateful day. My dad got fired from his work, a big company. He had worked there for 20 years. The only money we had then was what he had managed to save over the years. Finding a new job wasn't easy. It was a hard time for all of us, especially my dad. He was becoming desperate. At times, he just sat there, quietly, deep in thought, and I rarely saw him smile since. One late night, we were still up waiting for him when he walked through the door. But something was different. He wasn't walking straight. It was the first time in my life seeing him drunk. I decided to take matters in my own hand. I started job hunting. I was lucky enough to find something suitable at a startup company. The pay was good enough, and the more I worked, the more I earned. I was trying my best to get our life back. I was giving it all I've got. My dad started asking me for money. I was more than happy to give him what he needed. I didn't even ask what it was for. Then he started asking for more. He came late almost every night, and he was never awake in the morning. It seemed like we hadn't talked together for ages. Then, money started disappearing from my purse. I got home from work one night. It had been a long day, and I was really tired. I put my bag in my room, and I went to the kitchen to find something to eat. I made myself a sandwich, then took it back to my room. But when I got to the door, I saw a shadow moving inside. I thought everyone was asleep, so I opened the door slightly and looked inside. I couldn't believe what I saw. My dad was standing over my bag, and my wallet was in his hand. He found no money in it, so he threw it on the bed and started going through my purse. At that moment, my mom came down the stairs. She had my dad's shirt in her hands and a small pack of white powder. I looked at her face. Her eyes were filled with tears. I tried to speak, but found nothing to say. My dad came out of my room. He saw us standing there. He tore the shirt and the pack from my mom's hands. He was hysterical. He started breaking things around him. Suddenly, everything changed. My mom and I were too scared to move. But then my sister came running down the stairs. He pulled her towards him and held a knife to her throat. He threatened to kill her if we didn't give him money. Without a moment's thought, I did what he asked. Things only got worse. Nothing was ever enough. He asked for more and more money, and if I refused, he'd get violent, beating up anyone in his path. I couldn't stand by and watch, so I would just give him what he wanted, until I decided enough was enough. He barged down the stairs one evening and asked for all the money I've got. I told him we had expenses to pay, the rent, school fees, but none of it mattered to him. He asked me again for the money and threatened me if I didn't do what he asked. I refused. He hit me so hard that I crashed my head against the wall and fell to the floor, bleeding. Everything went dark. My mom took me to different hospitals, and I had to do a lot of checkups and tests, but all the doctors said the same thing, that this was it. I was sentenced to live my life in darkness, never to see the light again. Bumping my head against the wall was one of the reasons, but apparently my psychological state played a huge role in my recovery. The doctors suggested that I'd be taken to a psychiatrist. My dad felt sorry for what he had done to me. He quit the drugs and alcohol, tried to be proper, but it was because of him that I was in this state. I didn't know if I could ever find it in myself to forgive him. I was torn inside. He was my dad, but I couldn't forget what had happened. I stopped talking shortly after, and he left, disappearing from our lives. No one knew where he was or what he was. A year had passed, and he came home. He sounded good, kind of like how he was before. He's trying to make up for what he had done. But to me, nothing he does makes a difference anymore. Kind of like how he was before. He's trying to make up for what he had done. But to me, nothing he does makes a difference anymore. I'm still in the dark. That's something I'm gonna have to live with my whole life. I can't change that. What do you think I should do? I confess that I love money and fame. People envy me for it, or they did. I've been a prima donna since the day I was born. All girls dreamt of being me. My father helped my brother and I achieve all our dreams. But there was one fly in the ointment, and this is my story. My name is Amelia. I'm 17 years old. My father's a businessman. My mother came from a rich family, so we were quite wealthy. rolling in dough, one might say. My brother Arthur was handsome, older than me. He went to flight school. We lived a good life without a care in the world. We had everything: cell phones, clothes, cars, servants, opportunities to travel the globe. We wanted for nothing. The most important thing was our happiness. And so my story starts at the villa where I lived with my family. My father employed many servants to attend to our every need. Martha was our head servant. She was in her 40s, funny, smart. Arthur and I loved her. Oddly, we didn't view her as a servant because she took such good care of us. Mother didn't seem to like her for some reason and was always mistreating her. Father, however, adored Martha. Once I left my iPod in the garden and I was going to get it. On my way to the garden, I passed by Father's office, so I decided to go and talk to him. He was at his desk, and Martha was standing next to him, crying. I figured it was because Mother had mistreated her again. Father saw me standing there and he asked me why I was still awake, and I told him about my iPod. I didn't think much of it at the time. As time passed, Mother and Martha's disputes became more frequent every day. Father wasn't home a lot, but whenever he came home, he would always ask about Martha first. One time, when this happened, I noticed that Mother glared at Father. I couldn't understand why. Father was often away traveling for long periods of time. One of those times, I noticed that Martha was always tired because Mother was making her work very hard. Mother never let her relax. One day, after midnight, I went to Martha's room to check on her, and I was shocked to see that she looked different than I remembered. I asked if she was pregnant, and she said that she was, but that I shouldn't tell anyone, otherwise she'd get fired. I didn't understand why my parents would fire her for being pregnant. A few days later, we received some really horrible news. Father's plane had crashed, and there were no survivors. We were stunned. All of us were crying, but Martha was crying especially hard. Suddenly, Martha fainted, and we took her to the hospital. Our life had changed overnight. After the funeral, Father's lawyer called us about Father's will. He came to our home and met my mother, Arthur, me, and Martha, and 2 other servants. The lawyer began reading the will. He started with Mother's inheritance, then mine, then Arthur's, and then Martha's. He looked at Martha, cleared his throat, and said in a quiet voice, "Martha, the deceased has left you 10 million to raise your child." The lawyer read the last line of Father's will, which said, "Martha's child is mine." We all gasped, but Mother suddenly lost it. Enraged, she attacked Martha as the lawyer pulled Mother away from her. Arthur was holding his head in his hands, and I was shocked. I said to Martha, "How dare you? How dare you do this to us? This is our money. You don't deserve any of it." Then I spoke to the lawyer. "Please tell me this isn't true." He replied helplessly, "Unfortunately it is." Arthur was glaring at Martha, and he said coldly, "Martha, you are going to die." Martha looked very frightened upon hearing this. That night, the other servants helped Martha sneak out of the house. Arthur came to my room that same night and told me that we had to kill Martha. He said he knew where she was, and that her 10 million belonged to us. At first, I was hesitant to get involved. I mean, that was murder, but in the end, I reluctantly agreed to help him. The next day we made a call and hired a hitman to rid us of that disaster. Later we received a call from him. He said that Martha was no longer a problem. We